YouTube is such a great resource for starting out and learning that. You don't want to turn it into where you just watch a tutorial and then just recreate that tutorial click for click. I would love to teach an effect to where you can learn multiple techniques that you can apply to just learning the program and apply it to other effects. I realized that I enjoyed teaching and showing people how I created the things that I was creating.
Welcome back to Famous Editors. Today I'm talking to a very popular YouTuber, visual effects artist, Brandon Fate. Over 13 million views on his YouTube channel, 200,000 subscribers. He teaches some of the most amazing visual effects that you've seen in Marvel and DC movies, everything from his famous tutorial on the Thor hammer summon to how to levitate in a video. In this conversation, he talks about how he got his start, how he went from learning his skills, watching YouTube videos, to teaching hundreds of thousands of people how to do what he does. He talks about how to choose the right thumbnails, what's going to work and what won't. He talks about how to monetize streams so that your YouTube channel can be your primary source of income. You don't have to work other jobs while you're building your following and creating your content. He talks about how to start brand partnerships, which can be one of the most lucrative areas of operating a YouTube channel. And he talks about how to get your start as an editor and filmmaker building a successful YouTube channel. So great guy, really fun conversation. I think you'll enjoy this as much as I did.
Thank you for having me. And so yeah, I would say my interest in editing started in back in high school when I had a TV production class and we were tasked with making a short film on any topic that we wanted to. And I was a big Star Wars fan growing up, so of course I chose to make a lightsaber like dueling video. And it was just me and a friend, and we just got some like prop lightsabers and made a little short film about us just doing a little action scene. And that was the first time that I ever filmed and edited anything. And so I took that footage into iMovie at the time. That's what we were using in class. And I just edited that together. And I really enjoyed that process and seeing what I was able to take from just an idea and turning it into a video, a final video that I could see at the end. And there weren't any visual effects or anything like that in it at the time because I didn't know how to do any of that yet. But that really piqued my interest and had me start exploring more in the editing world. And so the next step was like, how could I take this lightsaber and do like how they do it in the movies? How can I add a glowing beam to it? So around that time, I just went onto YouTube and I looked up for tutorials and I found one that led me to After Effects. And then I started exploring After Effects and then learned how to do the lightsaber and different effects. And I started exploring more VFX from that point. And so that's where it all kind of began.
So you were there learning how to create these amazing effects that you saw in films. How did you educate yourself? And then what made you decide that you wanted to pass that teaching on and in turn teach your own subscribers how to recreate these effects?
It's again kind of stemmed from Star Wars. Like Star Wars had a big influence on me. So yeah, so after learning how to do like the lightsaber effect, then it was around the time that the Force Awakens movie was coming out. I wanted to just make another lightsaber video, but this time with the actual effects and like add some After Effects stuff to it. So it was just me, my wife, and her brother, just the three of us. We went out and made just a lightsaber video of where I wore a GoPro, and it was like a first person action video where I was fighting Kylo Ren. We dressed up her brother as Kylo Ren. And so we shot and I edited all that by myself and did the painstaking rotoscoping. It took me almost 2 months to do it by myself. Yeah, I learned a lot from that. And then around that time, like I was saying, the Force Awakens was just coming out. So that video, it got some traction to it and it ended up getting 2 million views around that time. That's when I was uploading to a different channel that I had at the time. It's called Fate Entertainment. And that channel is still live. You can find that on YouTube. That was before I was uploading to my Brandon Fate channel. But so that video had a pretty positive reaction to it, and people were asking questions about like how did I do the lightsaber effects, or how did I do the force push effect that I had in the video, or even how did I make the lightsaber prop. A number of people were asking that. I decided to make like a behind the scenes channel, which I called Brandon Fate. And the first like how to video that I made was how I created the lightsaber prop for only $30. And I uploaded that one, and that had another positive response to it. And then from there, I made another tutorial. It was my first like editing tutorial, and it was how I created the force push effect in that video. And then it kind of snowballed from there. And I realized that I enjoyed teaching and showing people how I created the things that I was creating.
Awesome. What is your workflow for making these videos? How do you first of all identify that you think is going to resonate, and then do you like to will you write it out first? Will you just start cutting footage and find the story that way? At what point is music integrated? What's your process?
So usually it's from effects that I'm curious on how to create, like something that I'll see in a Disney Plus show, like a Loki effect or something like that, or like my most recent one, I did a Thor hammer summon effect because the Thor movie was coming out, and I was just curious on, like I've always loved the obviously the effects that they make in Marvel and Star Wars movies, so just curious on how you could do that at home with just yourself or a couple of people. So yeah, it starts with kind of thinking of that first, and then I'm kind of impatient. I just like to go out and try to start shooting and see what I can do first, and then it usually takes me a few different tries to get like the final effect down. I don't just go out and film it, and then that's the final effect that people see in my tutorials. I usually have a few different like rough versions of that effect. So yeah, I'll go out and shoot it. I do like plan out the video and the effects, the shots that I want beforehand. I'll storyboard that out, or do a shot list, and then edit the effect first, make sure that it's like worthy of sharing, and then I'll create the tutorial from that point. The music and all that stuff kind of comes after the creating the effect part.
Cool. Tell me about the software that you prefer, and what other software you've tried along the years. Do you think the Premiere and After Effects will remain the dominant, the tools to know for this kind of work?
Yeah, so the first ones I stumbled upon were After Effects. I knew about After Effects before I ever even knew about Premiere, and I actually started editing in After Effects first. I didn't even know that there was like an editing software to like cut video together, and I was like, this is not very intuitive. Like this is pretty difficult to edit in. And then I realized that it was like a VFX compositing software, and then when I discovered Premiere, it made my life a lot easier. So so I started out with those two. I also tried Sony Vegas back in the day. That was one of the first ones that I started with. But I really enjoyed the workflow of Premiere and After Effects together through Dynamic Link. So I really those are kind of like my main go-to software that I use. And I have been starting to learn Cinema 4D. I would love to get into like 3D stuff, but that's like something that I'm just learning on the side right now, and just see how that goes.
What will you do in Cinema 4D once you have that mastered?
I would love to first upload just things to probably like Instagram and TikTok, just short little clips, little videos, just to get more practice in it. And then I don't know if I'll ever be proficient enough to like teach Cinema 4D. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are really good at teaching that. But yeah, as of right now, it's just something that I'm curious and learning and adding that to the knowledge that I have.
What type of content to produce for each of the social platforms, and how do they differ?
Okay, yeah. So right now, I just upload strictly to YouTube. I do. I need to get better at uploading to Instagram. I would like to kind of expand my social media presence to Instagram and TikTok. But yeah, right now it's purely um, to YouTube and tutorial based VFX and editing content.
And what have you learned along the way that has helped you grow your YouTube subscriber base? What tips and tricks can you pass on?
You have to be passionate and interested in the content that you're making. That's one of the biggest points that I always feel like is very important. That if you if you're trying to create content that you're just like kind of interested in a trend or trying to build up views, that you'll get burned out, and you won't be able to make it to a point to where you feel like you've really grown and learned a lot over the years. So definitely, because YouTube is a very like consistency is key for YouTube, and you really want to make it a point to where you upload pretty often, and you just want to keep going at that. And if you want to really just focus on being consistent, and I would say that's the main part with YouTube and focusing on something that you're passionate about creating.
How do you choose good thumbnails?
My wife, she actually helps me a lot with that because she's an art director and a graphic designer. So I've been pretty lucky to have my wife help me a lot with getting me on the right track with the thumbnails and the fonts and everything. So I'm pretty fortunate with that. And then also beforehand, planning it out is good as well. Like kind of having an idea of the shot that you're going to be having in your effect. It's good to plan that out ahead of time so that it can match to your thumbnail in the video. You actually have that shot in your video so that it's not like clickbait or anything like that.
What are your revenue streams? So tell me about the business of Brandon Fate. How have you made this channel or these channels into something that can support you full time?
Yeah, so it definitely just started out as a hobby at first, and AdSense is usually the first thing that happens with like YouTube success when you start building up an audience, because then you can get your videos monetized, and that's a pretty small area of it though. And then once you start getting AdSense, and then you can uh, get a few sponsorships and you can partner with brands and collaborate with them, you're able to focus more of your time on creating content for your channel rather than like, because I know a lot of people, it can take some time until you can, like, obviously you have to pay the bills and you have to be working. So, like, freelancing on the side, it was a big part for me to keep doing that at the same time while I was creating YouTube content. And as my channel is growing, I'm able to focus a little bit more on just YouTube as I've been able to partner with some brands. So that's been great. And then it helps me create more content for my audience. So
How have those brand partnerships come to be, and what does that look like?
the first one I was NVIDIA and HP reached out to me in 2020. That was the first one that when that happened. And at that point, um, my channel just got monetized a few months ago. I hadn't had any brand offers or deals or anything like that. And so, yeah, it was a pretty big thing when I saw the email come in. I thought it might have been like a spam email or something because I wasn't expecting anything like that to happen anytime soon. And then, yeah, I talked with them and partnered up with them for um, some of their hardware and integrating that with Premiere Pro. And then it kind of built from that. And then once you get a certain sponsorship and brand deal on your channel, it really helps show that you can create brand deals and be partnered up with brands. And that really helps it develop from that point.
Tell me about the freelance jobs you were doing. How were you getting those jobs, and how did you use that to sustain this effort that went into building the channel before it was profitable?
So me personally, I would do a combination of shooting, like being a camera operator, and then also editing as well. Kind of starting out doing multiple different variety of things, kind of just exploring what I was interested in. So I had a few years where I was doing wedding videos. That was early on to where I would shoot and edit my own, for my own clients, and that really got me a lot of experience in editing and just like getting a video out and just learning that whole process. So that kind of led to meeting a certain connection to then where I could where I started doing freelance wedding shoots for this company and local to my area. And then they needed some corporate video stuff, and they knew that I did YouTube on the side, and they saw some of my work, some of my YouTube videos, and saw that I did After Effects, and they had some of their clients that were interested in After Effects work. So he asked me if I'd be interested in doing some After Effects editing work for his clients, and then I kind of partnered with them, and then that kind of stemmed to where I could do a side thing also in editing and doing After Effects work. So I was able to do that for a few years at the same time while I could keep focusing on building up my YouTube channel at the same time.
Awesome. I shot wedding videos too. I did that all through college and a little bit after. And it was great because I could justify buying some equipment, like a camera and an editing computer, and having to slog through 4 or 5 hours of my own terrible footage and make something that the couple would find halfway acceptable taught me a lot about editing.
Yeah, that was the thing with weddings. Like you're saying, as you're going through the edit, you really you learn a lot about shooting while you're editing because you're like, what was I thinking here? Why did I get this shot? And you can just like scrap it. And then when you go to shoot your next one, you're like, oh yeah, I saw how awful this looked when I was editing, and I'm not going to do that again. So it's definitely a good starting point for sure.
Did you have any nightmare scenarios?
Um, you know, probably the worst one that ever happened was we were shooting in a very small church and we were very cramped in there. And our two side angle cameras didn't have a clean shot for the kiss for the couple. And then we only had one back main camera. And right when the couple was about to go in for the kiss, the photographer stepped right in front of our camera and blocked the shot. So that was probably the worst thing that ever happened. But the couple, they were fine. They were okay with it.
I had a camera recording the ceremony, similar situation. Another guy was shooting with me who was much better with camera than I was. My footage was always, mostly unusable, but he was pretty good. And so then, but somehow he was in charge of the microphone. And so at the end of the ceremony, he comes up to me and his face is ashen, just all white, and he's like, uh, "Nick, I just realized that the microphone wasn't recording." And I said, the whole, and this was, all of the vows and everything that the priest said. And I said, "Wait a minute, the whole time or just at the end?" He's like, I don't know, but it just wasn't recording it when I got to it at the end." I said, "Oh boy." So of course, I normally I would wait, a few weeks before editing this footage because I just needed, I was never looking forward to cutting these wedding videos, but I raced home from that wedding, fired up the audio and listened, and there was nothing from that whole ceremony. So I turned it into this like extremely artistic montage with every editing trick in the book, everything I could, come up, every filter I could find went on it. The music, beautifully edited little wordless montage. And so then I would always play, I don't know if you did this. I would present the wedding video to the couple, and we would watch it, and that was sort of like the final handoff, and then I would get the check when once they approved of it. We're sitting there, and the like lead up to that ceremony was fine. We have the groomsmen like getting ready and making jokes, and the bridesmaids are having a great time, and it's all good. And the whole time I'm looking at the couple, thinking, "Oh, oh no, here it comes." And we get to the my little montage of their ceremony. It's like a music video basically. And then suddenly we're in the reception, and they had really loved this little montage thing. But then when the reception starts, they look at me and they say, is the ceremony later, or when does that footage happen?" And I said, "Oh, no, that was the ceremony." And they said, "Oh." But we didn't hear anything. We didn't hear the vows. And I said, "There was a microphone issue." We didn't actually get that audio. So I made this montage. It was just silent. It was like the longest, most quiet minute of my wedding video career. We just sat there and they were just looking at me and said, there was no sound at all from that. And I said, "There was nothing." And I just sat there and I just looked at the ground and said, "Oh, okay." And then we watched the rest of it, and we just didn't really talk about it again. And that was it. And then I left.
Oh man.
Did you ever think you might go like professional wedding video producer?
Yeah, there was I guess a point probably for 2 to 3 years where I guess I considered myself like a full-time wedding videographer, but it was just I always found myself anytime I wasn't doing weddings, I was just like scratching and itching to like make a YouTube video or do something involving VFX and that kind of stuff. So like the problem is it can be tough in the beginning to obviously turn that into to revenue and income. So like you can stay doing something for a little longer because obviously you're making money in it, but at the end of the day, it wasn't as satisfying and fulfilling as it's been for me to do VFX and YouTube and editing.
Where will you go with from here? Will you create feature films? Will you create a series?
So yeah, I've been something I'm planning on getting to, and I've been planning it out, is doing kind of a course, an editing course separate from YouTube that could be on a website to where I get more in depth to the basics because uh, sometimes I'll see it in the comments on my videos. You can tell that there's like there's varying levels of like some people are just starting out and some of the videos might be a little too fast paced for them and they want to kind of slow it down and learn a little bit more. So, and then others are there, they've been using it for a few years and they kind of just want to know the general idea of how you created something. And they don't really necessarily need to know the click by click, every press of the button tutorial. So, so that's definitely something that I would like to do is more of an in-depth class outside of YouTube. And then at the same time, I would love to focus on short film content to where it's centered around VFX short films so that I can create like a 5 to 7 minute short film. And then from that short, I can show the behind the scenes on my channel about like what went into making that short film and also create the tutorials on like how I made the VFX for those short films. So then those short films can kind of like
Yeah.
satisfy like what I want to make as like on an artistic level, and then I can also share that content with my audience on how they can create the certain things that I made for that.
Oh, that's excellent. Have you written any of these shorts yet?
I have a few. So yeah, I have a few scripts right now that I'm finishing up that I'm planning on. I'm doing this year, and I'm going to start introducing that to see how that goes over on my channel.
Can you give me a preview of one of them or a premise or something?
Just one of the general ideas for one of the shorts that I have in mind. It's called After These Messages, and it's based in like a kind of a futuristic sci-fi world where all of our emergency services are you have to have like a subscription plan to access them, and if you don't, you have to watch ads for it. And so
Oh, I love
the
that.
idea stemmed from because I live in Florida, and it was in 2017 when Hurricane Irma was coming through, and I remember I was on the Weather Channel app trying to get like updates on like what the path where this hurricane was going to end up, and I had to watch like 30-second ads for every single video I was trying to get.
Is you're trying
Yeah,
to
you're
get.
trying to get crucial information about like, do I need to evacuate? What's the strength of the storm now? Like, what's going on? And it just sparked this idea of like, what if emergency services were that way to where you had to like watch ads beforehand? So yeah, I have this idea of a guy getting like injured and then needing to contact an ambulance, but maybe he doesn't have like the premium subscription and he has to watch ads and stuff before he gets any help. So
That's so fun. Oh, I can't wait to see that. And then the more in-depth courses that you mentioned before that, what could that look like? How would you structure the perfect course? What would the experience for that editor be, and what can you do outside of YouTube that's different from your great uh, tutorials on YouTube?
with the course, I would love to teach an effect to where you can learn multiple techniques that you can apply to you're just learning the program and apply it to other effects. So one of the first effects that I remember a lot of people have learned is like how to clone yourself, because that's a pretty basic effect to where you could stack footage, you can learn rotoscoping and compositing, and it really teaches you like keyframes and different things like that. And you can do that in a lot of different editing software. And so I would love to do that basic effects to kind of what I learned from the beginning and what I feel like helped me learn these programs to where how I know them now. And outside of YouTube, I don't know where it would live, possibly on a website, and then or maybe like a Skillshare type of class.
What do you think is the ideal way for editors to learn? So, a lot of people are watching tutorials like yours. They're home trying to make their own music video or trailer or whatever that project is. What can people do to accelerate their learning and develop those skills as fast as possible?
YouTube is such a great resource for starting out and learning that. And then you also have to put in the work to where you don't want to turn it into where you just watch a tutorial and then just recreate that tutorial click for click to where, because then you're not really learning how to use the program. You're kind of just recreating somebody's tutorial that they showed you. So it's a great starting point to do that, but at the same time, then you want to take that knowledge that you've learned and apply it towards a different effect. So like if you learn, like I said, the cloning effect, something simple like that, then take that method of rotoscoping something out and apply it to something that possibly you haven't watched through a tutorial, and then just practice those effects at home. And over time, with doing that, I definitely think that you can learn these programs that might feel a little bit overwhelming in the beginning, but over time with doing it, that I feel like that's a great way to learn them.
What do you think are the most interesting career paths for editors these days? What do you see at the forefront of, being a very popular YouTube creator? What careers exist now that maybe people don't know about or that didn't exist in the past?
YouTube was just became a thing when I was in high school. And before that, it almost felt like you had to be a part of like the big like Hollywood machine to where you kind of became an assistant editor and had to do like an apprenticeship and then kind of learn under somebody. And that was kind of the only way that you possibly felt like you could break in to the editing world or filmmaking industry. But then with YouTube coming along, that has progressed it to a certain point, and now with Instagram and TikTok becoming such a big part of it, it's used by like the largest companies now. I see listings for they need social media video creators, and some of them are like 20 years old, like right out of high school, and they already have 5 years of experience making videos on TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah.
So it's exciting seeing the difference and to where it's going to go from here with how normal it is for people now growing up being having that capability of creating videos. Like you can shoot a 4K video and edit it all on your phone now, which is just incredible. And it gets you started at such a early age, and you can get to a point to where you just feel very comfortable to like the career paths. I feel like are just the whole game has changed now to where, like I said, you can just come right out of high school, you have years of experience editing, and then your portfolio speaks for itself on your Instagram page, and then a company can see that and want to work with you directly. They just contact you, and then you can create a video for them, and then it just takes off from there.
Yeah, it's true. With that self teaching available and now so common, what do you think is the value of film school?
I went to film school. It was a 2 year program in Orlando. It was called Valencia College. It was cheaper than a university, so it's definitely more accessible to more people. But it teaches you. It's a very technical program that teaches you how a film is created from the ground up. So some of our classes were like camera techniques, grip and electric, sound, editing, so you learn certain things that you wouldn't have access to necessarily even through YouTube. I know there are some YouTube channels to where you can learn different like grip and electric people. They show you like the gear and they can kind of get you familiar with it. But it's different when you actually get a hands-on experience with some of this gear. Like we had access to a red camera at our school, and not many people have access to a cinema camera of that level if you're just learning at home on your own, just starting out. So that definitely puts you in position to start learning different technical skills that you wouldn't be able to on your own. But again, it depends on where you want to go with it. So some of my friends that I attended Valencia with, they've gone on to they moved to like Atlanta or LA, and they've joined some of the guilds over there, and they work on like one of my friends worked on The Walking Dead and different things like that. So it can definitely put you in position to become part of a crew and go that route. I feel like that's what my film school experience was definitely was a big positive. Like I had my first paid camera department gig before I even graduated Valencia. I worked on a feature film as a digital loader, so I could have gone that route in the camera department. But for me personally, I kind of wanted to focus on creating my own stuff, like directing and editing my own things and uploading that myself. And that's the thing. I was already doing that before film school. So, and then I was doing it during and after. So it's like you have to put in that work beforehand to really maximize film school. I feel like film school, you can't just go to film school without really knowing like a basic knowledge about filmmaking and stuff. You kind of have to want to put in that extra work, and it'll take you to a certain level because it sets you up in these positions, like I said, that you didn't have access to before. And the connections are another great part of film school where you're suddenly in a class of 50 other people that are all just as passionate about filmmaking as you. So you can get someone who is focusing in sound. You can make they can become like your best friend, and then they can help you with sound on your short film. Or you can get someone who was maybe wanted to be a gaffer or a director of photography, and then they can help you with your stuff, and then you can help them. It's a big collaborative effort, and that was like I would say that was one of the more positive things about film school was the collaborations and meeting connections. And but again, like the stuff I've uploaded to YouTube, I didn't necessarily learn any of that from film school. Like I didn't learn how to rotoscope and create a lightsaber effect in film school. I learned that on YouTube, and that was my first. Yeah, that was my first video that kind of took off for me was stuff that I learned on my own. So it really depends on the route you want to go, and I think film school can be a beneficial path to take depending on what you want to do.
For these editors just starting out in their career right now who would love to have a channel like yours or love to get to work on exciting visual effects driven, action content, what advice do you have? What should people be focusing on?
Yeah, I would definitely say to create content that you're passionate about and interested in, and being consistent with it. You really need to stick with it to learn because you can. The first stuff that you make is most likely it's not going to be that great. It's going to be the worst work that you ever create in your career because you're just starting out. And I mean, I have multiple videos on my channel that I've like privated or just like they're not public because I don't want anyone seeing any of that stuff. So like on my channel it says like my earliest videos from 2017, but then I have some like before that that aren't public that I just felt like weren't good enough to have public. So so that's definitely you need to stick with it and not be discouraged with some of the first work that you put out. And one of the most like motivational things that I do is I like to go to some of my favorite creators pages and I on YouTube and I go back to their earliest videos and I'll look at their stuff and I'm like, wow, they were making stuff just like I'm making now, but they stuck with it for 5 years and look at how amazing they are now after hundreds of videos that they've made. So that can be a very encouraging thing, kind of seeing that we all start at a pretty similar level with not knowing much about what we're interested in, and then it's all a learning process.
Yeah. Who are those favorite creators? Who are your who have been your icons or your role models?
Yeah, so in the early days, I was a big fan of Film Riot and Brandon and Freddie from the Freddie W channel, Corridor Digital, and Andrew Kramer. I would say those are some of the biggest inspirations to me. And they were the first channels that I watched around that time to where you realized that it was possible to create content and like make a career out of doing editing and VFX content that you uploaded online. They were some of the first channels that were doing that at the time. And then at the same time, I learned a lot of what I know now from them. And so I can then take that knowledge and pass it on to my audience and through different effects and things that I've learned along the way. And when you watch those channels, you see that it was just them and a small group of people that were coming together to create this awesome content that, like, before YouTube and before social media, you might have not known was even possible to create on such a small level, where you felt like maybe you needed to go through like a film studio or something like that, and it can be kind of, it can feel like it's not very attainable for somebody that's just like starting out just by themselves and just in your bedroom with a computer and a camera. But these guys really made it feel possible that you could create something like that. So yeah, they've definitely been a big inspiration for me.
And now you're doing that for millions of other
Yeah,
people.
yeah, it's a
That's
pretty
awesome.
cool experience.
Well, thank you for coming here and sharing your story and some wisdom and inspiration. This was great.
Yep.
Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Nick.
All right, Brandon. See you
All
later.
right, thank you.